So here's what we're going to do is I'll do a prayer of gratitude to start off the session. And then for all the new people, we'll do a little review of what is energy healing. And then we'll follow that with a review of yesterday, brief review of yesterday. And then we'll go into today's healing. And the title of today's talk is Energy Healing for Ourselves and for Mother Earth. And so I've been encouraged by my husband, who's my best critic, to put a little more attention on Earth this time. And but we like to get in plenty of healings for everybody here in the group as well. Oh, thanks. It's a mermaid. I don't know if you can see it, but anyway, thank you. Thank you to Being, to Mother Divine. Thank you for everything, for this webinar, this live webinar, and for all the forms of consciousness or self which heal, for all the forms of consciousness which are responsible for the flow of knowledge, knowingness, the great holy tradition of wisdom. Thank you to the ancestors, to everyone's ancestors, for the vital role that they play in supporting the manifestation of the physiology. So thank you for the beautiful physiologies. And thank you to the divine in all of us, to our great healing circle, our very powerful circle of self, which is going to the core of all the concerns that we're addressing today and addressing those concerns in the highest and best possible way. We are becoming self-sufficient and self-sustaining in the field of energy healing, mastering energy healing personally as we go along. Thank you, everyone, so much for being with me. Okay, so what is energy healing in a nutshell? Energy healing is using our consciousness as the catalyst or the instrument through which transformation occurs. And we do that by focusing attention. Because when we focus attention, when we focus our attention, concisely, the attention is wholeness. It is consciousness. It's pure perception, pure awareness. So it carries all those qualities with it. So wherever it goes, it activates and enlivens those qualities. So when there's something suffering in the body anywhere, then it means there's an incompletion. There's some value of having lost connection with wholeness. So when awareness goes there, it reactivates that. It brings the missing pieces with it. Feeling those qualities of resolution and completion as innate values of awareness or consciousness. It's like every time we focus our attention, a connection is made, right? Like if I decide I'm going to focus my attention on the pink flower, the attention goes to the pink flower and a connection is made with that flower. Oh, there's such pretty flowers here. And what's there is the consciousness of the flower. It goes, oh, consciousness. I just got a shot of consciousness because someone put their attention on me. Completion. Some connection is made. And it's real. And the difference between using energy healing to heal and something like, say, a pharmaceutical drug is that in both cases, consciousness heals, but in one case, the catalyst is the chemical or an herb or something, or food. You know, I'm going to drink lots of water. That'll be good. It'll be purifying. Yeah, absolutely it will. And we decide ahead of time that the water is going to have a purifying effect on my body. So we drink lots of water, and the body's already decided before we even start up with the water that it's going to have a purifying effect. So the water comes in as the physical material representation of that intention or flow of consciousness, which is I want to do some purification for the body. So we drink the water, and the intention is there, the consciousness is there with it, and that activates the purification process. and it works. We drink the water and the body becomes more purified. The water did it, but the consciousness behind it also did it. And one can use consciousness like water. You can move your consciousness through the body in different ways. And all of us who are here, we know we've been practicing this, moving our consciousness, putting the consciousness in the heart or putting the consciousness in the head or wherever we want to focus it to create a flow and thus a specific effect with the consciousness. So we're moving it. We're moving our consciousness, and that's what it does. Awareness moves. Good job, everybody. So that's energy healing in a nutshell. We also talked a little bit yesterday about the 4 axes, which I also covered in the most recent blog, which all of you got if you were signed up for the newsletter, in brief, as means of navigating the ocean of consciousness. Because once we realize, well, yes, it's easy to move consciousness around, it's easy to focus attention anywhere we want, then we have to think, well, like, exactly where do I put my attention to get exactly the specific effect that I want? So we can traverse these various axes, and we have different relationships, different personal relationships with the different axes. The axis of smaller than the smallest to larger than the largest, our relationship is from the context of the human physiology. We're right in the middle. And that's our context. We're right in the middle. So we've created instruments that reflect consciousness, that allow us to look down like a microscope, lets us look down into the field of being, and the telescope lets us look out into the field and to see bigger and smaller. But consciousness can do it all by itself. The instruments are there, just there to support what consciousness is doing. So we have our point of reference here in the center, but then consciousness can traverse the whole field. And same with the area from more destructive laws of nature to more creative laws of nature. The consciousness, we locate it right in the center, and in so doing, we have access to the whole field. In the axis from dense to subtle, there's a point of balance at the subtlest end of that range. And it's between consciousness, which is sleeping or resting in its own nature, and consciousness, which is awake and aware of its own nature. And that's where we ended yesterday, was a very deep, profound dive into that space of self. And the homework assignment was to go remember that feeling of going deep, deep, deep into that point of connection between consciousness asleep within its own nature and consciousness awake to its own nature. Silence and dynamism. And remember what it felt like when we were working together, and to continue to keep with our attention and our awareness, keep going into that spot and keep reactivating and enlivening that point of contact with totality. Did anybody get to do it? Any hands? Oh, hands. Oh, we have hands up over here. Oh, there's some hands up. There's some hands up online too. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I also did the homework because I'm right along with you guys. We're, as a group, we're much more powerful in our ability to explore and utilize the potential of energy healing as a group. So I have experiences in the group that I don't have on my own. And so I also was looking more deeply into it. And if anybody has any feedback, you're welcome to share. Otherwise, I'll let you know what I saw. And that was life force. And if we go into that point between silence and its dynamic state, all in the unmanifest, of course, what we find is that there's a range, right? It's not just pure silence, pure dynamism. It's not like a harsh barrier right there. It's not. There's a continuum. even within that, we can go under the microscope and we can kind of look at it and see that it's, there's a process that consciousness undergoes to come from pure silence into its dynamic state. And the best word I could find to describe the process was translation. There's a translation, there's an interpretation, you could say, of what the essence of the nature of consciousness actually is. And that translation translates as our bodies. So every point in the body is a means of interpreting that experience. When I looked at it in its pure form, it was just such pure life force. And also one of the points that came up yesterday was there's an element of love. And as I looked more deeply into the quality of love, what I was noticing was that it seems that love is also a translation. Love is also a translation of it, because love is the way we translate the energy here. Awareness is how we translate the energy here. And then this sort of quality of experience of expression of life force is how we translate the experience in the gut area. That's like raw experience, you could say, just pure experience of it in the gut area. Anyway, this is what it's looking like to me through my explorations of the night. So it's my privilege and pleasure to share that with everybody. But the form of being itself is pure life, spark of life force, pure spark of life. And as I was looking at this pure spark of life, I realized, well, it can be broken down into that 3-in-1 structure that we often talk about of knower, known, and process of knowing. So that's another way of looking at it. It's another translation. But that spark of life is so vital and it's so essential. I would say that it comprises the very essence of all energy medicines. And it comprises the very essence of the consciousness, which is foundational to the manifestation of our physiologies and to everything. So it's a really useful, vital, important quality, which is, I would say, important if we're diving into the field of energy healing and becoming proficient in energy healing. It's like probably the most fundamental frequency of being or consciousness that we can harness at any point for anything. And it is like the very soul of Mother Divine. We could say it's the very soul. It's just pure life force itself. It's in everything. So we'll come back to that. But another thing that happened last night was there was healing for Mother Earth and for us. And the way it worked was that it was that quality, which I've just been referring to, that quality that connects opposites, we could say. It's like a point of balance. It connects the sleeping self with the dynamic self. And it was coming in like a stream of light into the core of Mother Earth, and it was radiating. It was very fascinating in the night to look at that, the radiation of that light as it was spreading out very systemically through the deeper parts of the Earth's body, through what I guess we would call like the molten core of the Earth's body, that deeper level. And then as it came up to more the surface of the Earth, it was like specifying, or I would say bifurcating, but it wasn't just into two, it was like into multiple. It was becoming more like specified and coming up in threads or streams up to the surface of the Earth, touching into all the nodes of the Earth, particularly the nodes that would be associated with the crossings of ley lines on the Earth, and also into our healing circle. And it was infusing this healing circle and these physiologies with that same quality of light energy. And at that point, there was a very interesting awakening of self-awareness that took place. For me, it was really fascinating. I was like standing up here with you guys, and I was feeling my own awareness of my being, I would say the awakeness of my being. Like, it was like coming up in like steps. It was coming up in steps as I was standing speaking with you. So, you know, I'm hoping that everyone got a chance to experience that in your own way, to translate it through your own physiologies and through your own sense of the way each of us deconstructs our experience so that we understand it, right? That each person was able to do that to some degree or another, because it touched on another important point of reference from yesterday, which was the axis from very asleep to very awake. And that axis is the one that we're currently really as a collective exploring right now. We're going into that axis of how do we get from more asleep consciousness to more awake consciousness? And what are the mechanics or the dynamics of that? And is there a method? You know, is there a process that we can set ourselves on? Is there a way we can position ourselves so that that process, which is happening all the time, right? Like as individuals and as a collective, we're constantly becoming more and more awake. I would say most of us are doing that. And as I said that, one of the points that came up from yesterday was how we were looking out into the field of the collective and seeing that there are individuals who are consciously deconstructing their waking process, who are consciously choosing or selecting to go backwards into their sleep. And that's okay. That's okay too. Everybody has their way. Everybody has their laws of nature and their path. But the universe is waking up. The universe is in a state of continuously waking up. And the source of creation, the mother creation, is here to know herself through us. So to be aligned with that cosmic evolution, that cosmic intention, is to be intentionally set on the path of waking up. I know I don't have to tell you guys that. You guys wouldn't be here if we weren't in that space. I'm just saying that it would be wrong of me to say that everybody is there, because they're not. Some people are going to sleep. That's okay. We're waking up. So the question is, how do we organize ourselves within the context of this reality where some people are falling more asleep, some people are more waking up? We're like in the waking up camp, we could say. And how do we, right? And like the thing is, this is the trick, is that if part of the creation is naturally setting itself to be falling asleep, then that means that there's certain laws of nature that are pulling away from the waking up process. So that's always going to be creating a kind of a balance or a counter resonation to the work that we do. So the more waking up we do, there will also be those elements that are more falling asleep. The difference is that if you're on the path of waking up, you're consciously there. And I would say in most cases, in almost all cases, the people that are on the path of falling asleep aren't even aware that there's such an axis. They don't even know, really. They're just trying to get comfortable. They're just trying to get into some kind of safe space or some kind of comfort zone. So having awareness is a big advantage. And that advantage allows us to work with those areas that are falling asleep. When we're waking up, we're owning whatever we put our attention on, right? So if we're putting our attention on aspects of the web of life, or we could say nodes in the web of life, in other words, people and places, we talked about locations on Earth that are having to be in like a deep sleep mode, then we own those spots. And one of the beautiful points from yesterday was that silence folded in on its own nature sits in those spots. So it's not like dead asleep. It is full of life asleep. It is living sleep. It is exquisitely resourceful form of energy that's there, completely nourishing, inebriating, like soft and comforting and satiating quality of being that's there. And it can go into those spots where people are falling in on their own nature because they don't want to deal. They don't want to deal. They don't want to, it seems like life is more interesting if we just go away. If we just like take it easy. I'm feeling a kind of an extension right now as we're working in this area. Right now we're working with the web of life around the earth, right? And I know that one of the aims of today's session is to actually go in and do healings from Mother Earth, but it's probably very good that we're starting with the web of life. And I attribute that to the brilliance of everybody in this group, that nature's just leading us to do that first. That's setting a good foundation and obviously vital to the work that we're doing today. So what I'm seeing is this extension of wakefulness, even in the nodes of sleep, even in those points which are being held steady. The reality is that nothing in the relative ever remains in stasis, because it's a constant profusion of transformation and change taking place at every point in creation. So even in those sleepy spots, what's happening is the consciousness that's moving, this light that's moving from the core of Mother Earth and right up through the center of our group and right up through the center of our physiologies and right into the web of life and into all the nodes that are awake in the web of life, is then shining the light of awareness into the sleeping spots. And it's bringing this quality of softness and satiation and comfort and tenderness. And I was asking, is it bringing that spark of life, that really amazing energy that I was looking at this morning? And I'm getting, it's like not so much. It's more like just creating a safe space for everyone so that there's trust. Oh, so trust is coming. Okay, trust. And then with the trust comes truth, honesty and truth. So this is I'm calling this transformation as I'm seeing it. And this is happening in the sleeping nodes of the earth right now. So first the comfort, that creates receptivity. Then the trust, which is a byproduct of the receptivity. And then with the trust comes the truth. And the truth is where the life force, that spark of life, starts to move into the sleeping nodes. When I said sleeping nodes, I saw such interesting of Mother Earth, not just in, as we've been working with this web of life, I've been thinking, people on Earth, right? People who just want to go to work, and then they just want to come home and have a beer and watch TV, and then they just want to go to bed drunk, and then they want to just wake up with a hangover and go to work, and then they just want to come home and get, people get in these cycles, man. They get in these cycles, and it's right. And it's kind of like, it's not a cycle that's positioning them for their maximum growth. But what I just saw right now was very interesting. What I was seeing was that the sleeping spots aren't just human spots. There are structures of Earth's intelligence which they had consciously removed themselves from interactions with humans and with the surface of life. There was some conscious decision to separate, to go to sleep, basically, to sleep deep in the earth. I'm seeing in the rocks and places like that, a kind of a deep sleepiness there. And the kind of a complacency too, coming first from a desire to just not want to deal. Just like the humans, not want to deal. I don't want to deal with stuff. Like the lake we were talking about last night, that's bad stuff. When in Russia, just to the recap, in Russia, when the Cold War began, a lot of the byproducts of the nuclear waste, byproducts from the creation of bombs and stuff like that, ended up getting just deposited in a particular lake, and it killed the lake, but it made it into a force of death. So it's like a very kind of scary thing. Anyway, we can send a link if you want to get scared. But anyway, what I'm saying is that things like that, there are the delicacy of we could say the Davic intelligence of Earth has been such that it really hasn't felt comfortable dealing with stuff like that. And so what I'm seeing is an awakening of that level of of Earth's energy, that Davic level of Earth's energy. Having these pretty flowers behind me, I think, is sort of helping give expression or translate what we're doing here in this particular part of our healing process today, is the awakening of those structures of Earth's intelligence which have needed to sleep because they needed to rebuild and rejuvenate. They needed to regroup, just like the laws of nature that break things down work together with the laws of nature that create, and there's a constant creation and destruction process that goes on. It's the same, that like these particular earth energies, I'm feeling them and they feel very earthy, like gnome-like or gnome-like energies like that are very connected to and wise with regards to the way the mineralogical manifestation of earth occurs. The minerals in our bodies distribute. The minerals in the oceans, in the waters of the earth. All these mineral intelligences seem to be awakening. And I feel that it could even possibly be related to what's happening with the zestite, which is this kind of new situation. Evidently, some of the crystals on Earth are starting to receive, anyway, so I've been told, like cosmic information, cosmic downloads, that thus upgrades the energy frequency in the crystals. Even simple crystals end up changing their energy frequency because of awakening within themselves and recognizing their capacity to support, uphold, and maintain various cosmic frequencies. So it's like along those lines, but it feels much more having to do with the short-term changes that take place on Earth, such as the changes in the seasons and the growth of the plants and animals and like that. But anyway, so we have our web of life and this light that's flowing from our group out into the web of life, and how it's affecting the areas of sleepiness that are, because you can imagine the web of life is like this, and they're like gaps, right? There's like places like right in there, they're gaps that are affected by the light that's shining through our being and through our group to support this awakening. And also to be nodes of holding for pure silence, spots where divinity can then enter into those areas and can find a home and hold steady in those spots. I still am feeling like there's something sort of playful and like there's a lot of energy in the relationship that we seem to be forging with the aspects of Earth's intelligence that have been sort of hiding and sleeping and sort of running away. I know, thank you. And so there's something about those energies that's connecting with what we're doing right now. And I feel as if how it is in nature that the silence of being is ever reaching from the field of totality up to the surface to connect with us. And those of us who've chosen to be on the path of evolution and our waking up path, we're reaching for that source of being. So there's a continuous sort of like folding into each other. I'm reaching for you and you're reaching for me, and we're trying to get to each other. And I'm sort of feeling like that's happening also with these parts of Earth's energy that have been as if sleeping for a long time. They need our support to fully wake up. And there's a desire at a very tender level, I would say best to translate through the heart, this one. Best to translate through the heart. And our capacity to love. Like the way you might feel when you see like a cute little bird or a cute little chipmunk or squirrel or something like that, and that's how we translate through the heart, is the ability to give from our side a little bit, to mix from our side our love in with this flow that's going into the sleeping spots. And as we mix a little bit of our love in with that, in just this, the most innocent, the most tender way, just the tiniest little, sometimes small things can be really big things. This is just a tender wave of love that goes with it. And I'm seeing it moving into those nodes and kind of like swirling around in the sleeping modes, just swirling around in the sleeping modes. And it's stirring. The love is having a stirring effect. And as it stirs the energy in those nodes, there's a kind of a release taking place in these nodes, these sleepy nodes on the earth. And first thing I'm seeing releasing is fear. So the fear I infer, must have been the energy that drove that sleep into place into position in the first place. So as the fear comes out, it's received in an embrace by our group. We're just embracing that and providing, oh, beautiful. Thank you. And is everybody able to see the chat? Because I'm seeing that you guys are saying to all panelists, if you put your chat up to all panelists, but not to all panelists and attendees, only I get to see, because I'm the only panelist. So I will read this last comment that just came in. It says, in some Christian literature, the second coming is the opening of the heart value. So that's beautiful, and it makes sense in it. So thank you for offering that validation for the work that we're doing, because for sure the second coming of that quality of being, and what is Christ, and we can look for a minute, what is the second coming, what is Christ, as we're coming into this Holy Week, right? Isn't this Palm Sunday tomorrow? I think. So Christ is the liaison between the individual and God, right? So basically, after Christ leaves the body, leaves physical form, and becomes an energy force in creation, Christ becomes that energy which supports the connection. If God is reaching towards us and we're reaching towards God, Christ becomes the manifestation of that liaison between those two forms. And again, we're looking at the balance or the connection between various forms on the different grids, right? And also in that gap between being asleep to its nature and being awake in its nature. And right in there is the spark of life. It's the manifestation of the divine, which is what Christ was. So beautiful old story that on some early course, an enlightenment course with Maharishi, the man asked, and I heard this from someone who was there, when I was a child, I really had felt a kind of a personal connection to Christ. And when I became a TM teacher, I associated with the holy tradition. And how do I reconcile, these levels of greatness? And Maharishi just said, all masters are masters of the holy tradition. All the masters. And the holy tradition also stands as the translator. It stands as that law of nature, or that part of consciousness which supports the flow of knowledge from the absolute quality-less level of being up to this surface level. So beautiful point. So just the relationship, what I'm feeling is a space is being created in our hearts to receive and accept our relationship like a sacred garden of the heart. It's the birth of a new sacred garden of the heart. And we're doing it for all of mankind. Thank God we're a big collective, right? Because as a collective, as we do it, as a group that we're doing it at a level that's enough that it can make a wave out into the collective of humanity, and we can actually make a statement through our action which translates into something that makes sense to humanity. But in our hearts, what we're doing is we're forging or formulating a sacred space for our relationship with this particular level of nature's intelligence, Earth's intelligence. And I'm using the word gnome-like because that energetically feels very much like what we're looking at, but I wouldn't say it's absolutely, because there's been a great transformation since this aspect of nature's intelligence went to sleep so many years ago, thousands of years ago, tens of thousands of years ago, some of them tens of thousands, 10, 11, 12, and counting, 18, 19, 20, so 20,000 years ago, 20,000, 30,000, 20,000, 21, 2, 3, about 23,000 years ago. That's what I'm getting. I'm getting about 23,000 years. Some of these energies have been sleeping. They went into a safe space for the sake of being able to maintain their integrity in the light of the changes that were taking place with humanity. And now we are able to create a sacred garden of the heart for the relationship of humanity with these particular intelligences of Earth. Have specific information about mineralogical information. I used the word information twice. Sorry. But you get the idea. And what I'm seeing happening is in our group, with our collective, everyone is now receiving a download regarding the nature of the earth element in the body, the mineralogical element. We're about something like a little more than 2 pounds of minerals, right? Stuck together with a bunch of water, something like that. Time for a drink. Oh, there are green drops on my cup. Okay. So receiving that information, and I'm just watching as it's going into everyone's physiologies. There's a redefinition of how beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. One of the ladies is saying that she's feeling a great shift and a release of tension. Beautiful. Yes, it's going into our bodies. The mineralogical level, this is my translation of what I'm experiencing of it. The mineralogical intelligence of the body is considered to be by us. These are beliefs. These are like core root beliefs that go back many generations. So I'm not just speaking it here to all of us, but we're going in and we're speaking it to the ancestors as well. A kind of a dead level of self or body. Right? It's just the fleshiness of our body. It's the earthiness of our body. It is the physicality of the body. And so by its nature, it's not so like light or buoyant or full of movement and energy. It's more like the static part. And so we've had a relationship with that part of ourselves. And I know that there are also some people, and I've been through times of this too, questioning even other parts of self like ego, which isn't physical, but is kind of like, we consider individual ego to be kind of like that part that stands in the way of us waking up. Sometimes it's looked at that way. And so even those areas, that's this clearing or healing or releasing of this very, very old belief is touching those areas too. Any little parts of self, any little aspect of the manifested form in any way, even something as abstract as ego, is being addressed and looked at in terms of its ability to honor the infinite silence, qualityless ocean of being. Its ability to represent that, or we could say translate that. And again, I'm feeling a little bit of releasing of fear also, and it's the same exact releasing of fear that the earth and intelligences were going through, but now it's happening like in our bodies. So that same, oh, isn't that interesting? So that same experience that the earth intelligences were having, where they were kind of sleeping and hiding and like in their, in their stasis, as we cultivate this beautiful sacred space on the level of consciousness of our relationship with that level of Earth's intelligence. So within our own bodies, there's a reflected structure, which is the mineralogical reality of our physiologies, which is also now going through the same transformation that the earth intelligence are going through. Now the earth intelligences, by my estimation, are going through that not simply because we have our intention on them, but because they're also being supported by this incredible ray of light that's coming up from the core of Mother Earth, and it's moving through all these various points of contact, these significant spots in our world. So, so the support is coming not only from our consciousness and our healing circle, but through the capacity of all of us in the healing circle to, I would say, be the vessel for that light. Be the vessel for that light. So it's really divinity, which is interacting with itself, right? The divine being is coming through from the center sun and coming through from the field of divinity, and it's meeting here, it's converging and creating this awakening of the ability to self-recognize. And that's like the underlying foundation or spark of this light force that's moving through everything that we started up with yesterday. And then as it goes into the sleeping parts, sleeping nodes of the earth, it's waking them up. And as they wake up, so I'm just recapping because I need to I've got to get myself in context, right? And then it goes into our physiologies, and it's waking up that mineralogical intelligence of our physiologies. So like actually the flesh of the body becomes like more alive and more awake. And what I'm seeing from this, okay, so the recap is, that's a good recap. What I'm seeing from this is now the body can be much more responsive to consciousness. So when we put our attention on the body, something that's not feeling healthy or whatever area needs some support or change or transformation, that as we put our attention there, the physical form is able to be more responsive. It's able to be more of a engaged, self-engaged player in the process. And it all comes down to the sacred garden of the heart that we just created. Like, this is a new thing. We created something new, and that's this beautiful, holy sanctuary where the precious relationship between ourselves as humans and these forms of Earth's intelligence can reside together, can interact in a way which is mutually supportive, in a way which is where we know ourselves to be each other. And I think that probably is the main feature or characteristic of all sacred gardens of the heart. Any love that you have, any one that you know, any relationship, when we go to that place where the relationship, the sacred space where that relationship resides, we experience ourselves as at one with that other person. That's why you can't lie when you're in that space. That's why if you love somebody and you haven't seen them in ages and you want to tell them that you love them, you can go into that space and all you have to do is feel your love for them, and they feel it in their own body as love flowing in their body. That it's just that intimate. It's that intimate. It's instant. It's instant. So essentially what we're doing is nature is self-interacting to awaken within us a level of self-recognition which was not previously awake, which has to do with our ability to embrace, accept, cognize, and fully integrate the mineralogical level of self, which means a really good, solid connection between consciousness and physiology. You did that. We did that together. Nice job. Like high five, everybody. Wow. Okay, beautiful, beautiful, amazing. Okay, beautiful. So let's look. I've got um, so I'm going to see. There seem to be some questions coming up, and I saved some. There were some questions that came up in the emails over the last couple of days, so I want to address everyone's question. So here's this beautiful goddess woman from Scotland who joins us. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for representing Scotland and also being the custodian of the gate to the Devas in the northeast corner of the country. And so she's saying, and this woman has like a really well-developed intuition and ability to translate through visual images what's going on. So let's see what she has to say. Oh, not sure it's related, but years ago she dreamt there were giant walrus, 3 of them, and they were guardians of the sea here. And strange, as there are no walruses anywhere near here. Yesterday I saw a video clip of a walrus swimming only a few miles away from where I live. And I thought perhaps it was a signal of something to do with this Mother Earth healing webinar, but I'm not sure what. Beautiful. Beautiful. See how beautiful? And you know, the nice thing about a person sharing an experience like that is that it shows how we each have our ways of translating what we're experiencing. You know, and it means a lot to me. This question means a lot to me because for one thing, it means that she, as now I realize inferring from this message, many of you were looking forward to the webinar and really thinking about it even before it happened, you know, and just gently putting our attention before the webinar even began to start to nurture up and activate the field of consciousness and our sacred space that we create in these webinars so that our time together is effectively spent. So that's the first thing, that she saw the walrus a few days ago. The walrus had been spotted, I mean. If the word is that the walruses have been gone for a long time, but you saw a walrus, I would say this is nature, or you saw the video clip that the walruses have been spotted back in the area. The first thing that came to me is that there were these 3 walruses that were guardians of the sea here. And when I read that, I said to myself, they probably were, but they were probably so long ago before the people came that since the memory of people at this time in your area, there haven't been walruses. So everybody's like, oh, there are no walruses in our area, but that there had been walruses at one time. And 3, of course, is always a very auspicious number because it represents that very, very delicate, fine mechanic that takes place at the depths of silence and the gap between asleep and awake, where unmanifest being awakens to its own nature. And when it does that, it creates a threefold form, right? It creates, if it's awake to its own nature, and its nature is knowingness, then it is knowingness knowing itself as knowingness. So it's got 3 things: knowingness, knowing itself, knowing itself. Knowingness, knowing itself. So you have 3. Yeah. And so the three are, that is a kind of a guardian form because it holds totality in a single unit, basically. And that, anyway, you saw the walrus on the video clip. It means it's the work that you're doing. It's a validation for you that the work that you're doing is actually having an effect. And thank you for sharing it with our group, because it also expands and extends that personal validation to our group. So thank you. That's a beautiful question. Love it. Okay. Have some other questions over here. There's some really, really smart people. Guys are so smart in this group. Okay. So here's a question from a brilliant man in England. Brilliant. One of the great intellects of our collective. I much appreciate. As we explore deeper each month into the realms of self-healing, it seems to be predicated on having a truly intimate relationship with silence, the gap. Yeah. At times, in times past, it's been deemed necessary to have the nervous system slowly primed and readied over sometimes lengthy periods of time to be able to truly rest in silence. I have something to say about that. However, in these modern times, there seems to be more and more evidence of spontaneous awakenings, which would point to maybe it's time to question our age-old traditions. So with that in mind, maybe I better comment on that, and then we'll go to with that in mind part, okay? So I think the role of the nervous system, and this is like a very nice time for this question too, because we just did this healing that's having an integrating effect between the physicality of the body and the consciousness itself. I think the difference is that in the modern times, what's happening is a lot of people are having momentary awakenings. Oh, sweet. Here's another comment that just came in. Love you all. Have to sign off to talk with a student now. Bye. Thanks for being with us. Yeah, that now in this day and age, what's happening is enough people have gone the long course, which is slowly, slowly cultivating that refinement and flexibility in the nervous system, like slowly over the course of time doing that, so that the nervous system is so flexible that the experience of the silence is maintained even in the most dynamic activity, and that's created like a bed or a foundation for a lot of people to start getting flashes. And I feel as if the flashes that are coming through, like a person will have like a moment of awakening, and I may have mentioned before that drugs can do that. This conversation I had with my son where he was saying that meditation is like slowly, gradually bringing a person's awareness out from the darkness of the cave to the light of the sun outside the cave. And that it's a gradual process that one has the ability to adapt. Whereas drugs are like blindfolding the man and then just pulling him out into the sunlight and whipping off the blindfold. He's like, whoa, there's the light. But then it could also make him blind, right? So because it's too much too fast and the body doesn't have time to integrate. So what's happening now at the level of the collective consciousness is that our bodies or our beings have enough people have integrated that experience that we've created a foundation so that there's like a underlying resonation of integration. And I'm sure a lot of you will have noticed that in many of our healing sessions, we've been bringing up the actual frequency or quality of integration as a light medicine. And absolutely, if we're talking about our own, as an individual and as a collective, as our group, our healing group, and I'm really seeing the group right now as an integrated collective, if we're moving along that axis from asleep to awake, integration would be one of the key factors, right? So there's certain factors that we've already identified, but I think it would be good to review them now. So one of them is maintaining balance in the axis from destructive and constructive laws of nature, chaos and order, or hell and heaven, however we want to define all those opposites. So if we maintain balance between those two, then we're harnessing the full potential of those qualities of consciousness to work together to give the oomph or the energy that pushes the process forward. So that's point number one. We can find our balance spot. Another point is that we talked about today was having the intention, like deciding that life is meaningful because I'm willing, because I take responsibility, because I want to see this awakening happening, even though I know it is the harder path. The easier path is to just sit in front of the TV, drinking beer and watching TV shows. That's the easy path, but that's not the path that ultimately leads to that level of intense success and fulfillment and power and integration and so forth. So we're taking the harder path. And it means, as we're going along, having to constantly monitor the dark and light axis, right? Because if I'm taking the harder path, that means there are going to be times when, like, there's going to be constant shifting and moving. There's going to be constant progress. That means transformation. That means sometimes the shift is going to be a little bit more on the chaos side, or sometimes a little bit more on the order side. And I have to be constantly working my balance point in the middle to make sure that I don't lose my point of maximum trajectory. It's not always easy. And there's also that element of being with truth, honesty and truth. No self-delusion, no self-delusion. And I think that's where we come to that point of ego that we talked about earlier. Some people think, well, it's my small ego that's holding me back from my evolution. I feel that we could translate the experience that way and talk about it in terms of an ego that maybe needs to be broken down or destroyed or something. But from my perspective, I just want to offer a slightly different translation. And that is that the small ego is also a kind of a collection of beliefs and habits that give rise to some self-delusion or self-deception. It's based on separation. It's based on separation. I'm over here, everybody else is over there, and we're different. We're different. No, it's just one being self-interacting. It's one being self-interacting. And it's divided itself up into separate little pieces, but they appear separate on the surface, but they're really not separate at all. And they're really parts of the same system, which is pulling itself up by its own bootstraps. So when we look at it that way, then any form of self-definition becomes integrated with totality. And from that perspective, then whatever love we give ourselves, or appreciation, acknowledgement, self-protection, etc., goes to the collective as well as to the individual. It goes to the whole field of self. And then it's not a vain or narcissistic or individualistic thing. It's something that one is doing as an expression of one's own ideal alignment with divinity. The divine is doing it through you, and you become the vessel. So that brings us to the integration. Integration, I think, is another one of, so balance is one of the big keys. Truth, no self-deception. Truth is one of the big keys. And then integration is another one of the big keys. That there's a ability, and everybody receives now a download for the exact frequency of consciousness, which is the essence of integration. It is the essence of connection. It is the essence of relationship. And as we're receiving this from our own deep inner intelligence, right? Your own being is bringing this forward, in translating it into a form that makes sense to you. As we're doing that, that integration or that connective quality is also tying into our sacred space, our holy sanctum that we've created with the Earth's intelligence. We didn't forget about those guys. Because this is a new love. This is a new relationship. Like any kind of honeymoon. It's like the honeymoon period. That in that space, it's so, the integration appears as softness. And again, this is because we established from the beginning in that sacred sanctum that it's the relationship of the heart, that we're translating our experiences in that space through our hearts. And we do that because that's a point of balance in the physiology, right? Which we just touched on yesterday, and it may be good to go back and look at that a little bit more. So I'm feeling the integration as a form, or I'm feeling the relationship between love and integration. And I'm feeling these two qualities that if we look at the quality as love, not as integration, but as love, it's much richer, it's fuller. Love contains that integrative energy within it. but the integrative energy also contains love within it. But it's like, if we look at it just as in pure integration without the love so much, what I'm seeing is the love takes a back burner position, but is still present. And in that position, this is very interesting, the love becomes very, very delicate, like almost non-manifest, almost quality-less, which makes it more powerful, because we know that all those feelings, all those light medicines, and all those energy frequencies that we self-produce, the more delicate they are, the more tender they are, the more subtle they are, the more powerful they are. So what we can do is we can take that quality of love, which is highly integrative, and we can put the integration quality more at the forefront. And as we do that, it lets the love step into like a more primordial level of its own expression. And it's interesting what I'm seeing, how, you know, I'll say something, then I check into the group, like, how is it reflecting in everyone's physiologies? What I'm seeing in the physiologies is very interesting. I'm seeing a healing taking place in the gut area for everyone, in the belly, in the gut, in the pelvic floor, in the reproductive organs, the eliminative organs, this whole area, even up into like the back, the lower back, the muscles and the fascia, the connective tissue in the upper back. Today's quality of Divine Mother is knowledge, but also that fierce energy that purifies. So those two qualities together, with the knowledge energy at the forefront and the purifying energy stepping back 1 degree at the lower level. And so it's that purifying energy of Divine Mother that sits in the belly area. So it's appropriate. We have support. In other words, that's our validation and support from the universe for this moment in the work that we're doing. And I'm also seeing something that feels like a big release in the heart area at the same time. Something that's just like letting go. And it's the letting go almost feels like it's translating also into a kind of a melting in the heart at the same time. So, so one of the things that I'm translating the experience, that in the gut area where the body breaks down the food and it really extracts the nutritive value from the foods that we eat, there we're talking about minerals. There we're talking about complex molecules which are essential for the body's survival. And so this is a healing that we're doing for our group, and we kind of oriented this towards ourselves. But what's happening is those intelligences of Earth, which are like new best buddies, our new friend, are throwing their 2 cents into the mix. We're doing this together. We're actually doing it together with them. So this healing is for that level of Earth's intelligence as well, or that level of Earth's body as well. So it's this quality of question just came in. I'll answer a sentence and then go to the question. It's this quality of awareness and like deep primal understanding about the mineralogical intelligence that's in the body, which is creating an upgrade for the whole gut area, and particularly for the lower GI tract. And it's also having a really nice effect for the bones, because as the GI tract upgrades in intelligence, it's able to extract those minerals from the food in a more effective manner, so better absorption. And the better absorption then translates to the bones of the body, creating more strength in the bones, because that's where we store a lot of minerals in our body. We also produce a lot of digestive hormones, and enzymes are produced in the bones, hormones particularly. Feeling still this melting quality going on. It's like the heart is melting. I feel as if in our whole group, there's a kind of a amazement and feeling of so sweet. It's like, I can't believe it's so sweet that we have this relationship that we didn't have before. It's a precious thing. And the fact that as a collective, we're putting it, and I attribute this to you guys, that we're putting it to work immediately to apply. This is the integration. Oh, that's the integration. Okay, see, I'm learning as I'm going along. The integration is we take the experience, the relationship with our new connection to Earth's intelligence, and then put it into practice, actually work together as a team, as a collective, to support this. I'm first going to say absorption of minerals into the physiology, but the energy behind that is the ability to appreciate. That means awareness, consciously knowing how the energy frequencies of the minerals are functioning and what's with them, and what those minerals feel like, not just physically feel like in the body, but their energy structure in the body, and that recognizing it as a life force, and recognizing that life force as part of my own self, and reconstructing what I know myself to be based on the fact that that life force is part of my being. That was a little complicated and abstract, but that was my breakdown of the healing that's taking place between the heart area where the melting is and the gut area where the increased capacity to extract the nutritive value of the food is taking place. Okay, good. We have a couple of questions coming in. Let's look. How does this help or affect others that may not be in the group or need help to awaken? That is a very good question. So thank you. It's an important question, because I appreciate the lady who asked this question has been in my webinars, like I think since the very beginning. I think she may have been one of the longest people in my group. So in our group, in the healing group. So, she's like, she sees that almost always when we do this work for ourselves, then we extend it to the collective. For one thing, there's the way this healing is affecting our bodies is quite different from the way it's affecting the subtle bodies, the energy bodies of Earth's intelligence, with which we've created this relationship. Those, I guess I need a name for them. I was saying it was like a gnome-like intelligence or something, but they're being affected in that through this healing. There seem to be communication channels, intercommunication channels on the Earth itself through the physicality of the Earth between these intelligences that hold or are the custodians of knowledge about mineralogical intelligence. We could call them the mineral custodians. How about that? There's an open flow of like intercommunication, as I said, and what that does is it creates a pathway for consciousness to penetrate into the mineralogical reality of the Earth, and it allows their consciousness to move from its sleeping state into a more active state on our Earth, thus allowing them to do more of to use their consciousness the way we're using our consciousness in energy healing, like they're using us as a model to affect evolutionary change for the Earth at a mineralogical level, from a mineralogical level. That means changes in the physical structure of the earth, and done so through this sacred space of love, so that those changes occur in a way which is life-supporting, which is gentle, which is validating to our human relationship with these particular levels of Earth's intelligence. I would expect that the result would be fewer catastrophic earthquakes, for example, fewer catastrophic Earth events that result in lack of life. Let's see. We'll see how that works. As far as other people, because the question asks about others. Interesting. I was looking also at the next question. But how it affects other people is that, first of all, it affects our ancestors, because as our body upgrades in its capacity to absorb minerals, for example, from the food, then our bodies become stronger. They become a living expression of the best of our ancestors. They become like models, you could say, models for the potential that our ancestors have for their evolution. So wherever the ancestors are, obviously for the bulk of them, the physiologies are no longer present, but wherever those souls are, we're still continuing to support their evolution through our own evolution. So the evolutionary process that we go through in this integration that's happening in the physiology will, of course, support our ability to be even more awake, as per the last question, which I do not want to fail to answer the last of that question that I started but never finished. So ancestors, that's clear. The other thing is that every time we make an upgrade in our physiologies, our beings just resonate differently. We resonate in our space, in our environment. We interact with the web of life differently than we did before. We're better aligned. And as a result of that, the very fact that we live, the fact that you are, is enough to create effects in the environment that are extremely life-supporting, that are extremely supportive of the awakening process for everyone. It's like we're like humming. It's like the life force in our body is like a hum, right? It's like a vibration, like it's like humming around in our bodies. and it's like the hum changes a little bit. It goes from to more like a, it becomes more refined, it becomes more sweet, it becomes better aligned with the cosmic hum that we're in. We're constantly in the cosmic hum, moving around in that space. So we become harmonious with the cosmic hum in such a way. Two things. One is that whatever we're humming at any given moment, it is supportive of the evolutionary process. So we're becoming part of the solution rather than part of the problem. That's the one thing. The other thing is that as we're consciously working together to upgrade the hum that's in our physiologies, we're learning how to manipulate the hum. That's powerful, because as we learn to do that, we become capable of tweaking the hum based on whatever's happening at any given moment or any situation, and start to be able to cultivate a song, basically, not just a single but whatever song we want to create. So we start to move that hum around a little bit, getting comfortable with how it moves. And then we know the hum is the foundation of the physical expression. So here's this really cool comment over here, and then I finish the question from England because we don't want to forget that. Her point is, for what it's worth, 21 to 25,000 years ago, the first human settlements seem to have formed. Fascinating. Beautiful, huh? Very interesting. Oh, thank you. Yes, and I think, aren't the caves of Lascaux, I think the caves of Lascaux date back to around that period, or are they 36? I guess that would be something easy enough to Google, but definitely we had humans out at that time doing stuff and working together. hunting in packs and things like that. You know, having like little nomadic treks through various parts of the earth. Okay, so in the light of the fact that it seems that accessing the silence, the deep silence of self, is essential for the energy healing process. And that we always thought it was this like long, slow trudge up the mountain of refining the nervous system and then having more experience of silence and then more refinement of the nervous system, more experience of silence, and slowly, slowly the whole thing becomes integrated and becomes stabilized. You know, he's saying maybe we need to kind of rethink that theory a little bit, because maybe there are ways to speed it up or integrate more quickly. And I would say, yeah, that one of the things we're doing in these groups is we're establishing what exactly we can do. We're just working from our individual point of perception. What can we do to definitely support that awakening happening in a more dynamic and powerful and stable and exquisite way? So then he's saying, okay, so with that in mind, he's wondering if the time has come to petition Mother Divine for a healing which negates the tradition of novice, student, teacher, master, and therefore allows whomever has the courage to look inwards or ask the question, who am I? See, I told you this guy was smart. Access the most profoundly transformative levels of the gap previously only available to true masters. So I'm feeling from the level of the heart where the mermaid is. That appeal to the mother of creation, to Mother Divine, for a healing that will support our ability to locate both the teacher and the student within the field of each of our individualities, and for in the sacred garden, the sacred space of the mineral custodians, because we're together now with that level of being and that level of self. So all of this, it's a tradition, it's a tradition. That's what they're saying. They're saying this is a tradition. We represent a tradition, an ancient tradition. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. And they represent an ancient, so it's interesting that the answers being translated through the mineralogical custodians, the mineral custodians. And so I am translating through them to you because I love you, because this is what I'm doing. They're saying that we have this tradition of a whole field of understanding of the connection between consciousness and matter. And that means densest level of matter, physical matter like earth, like the 5 elements earth. So we have a tradition, they're saying, of this relationship between earth and consciousness. And it's ancient, and it's got all kinds of, like I'm seeing the archives opening, you guys. They're sharing the archives with us. That the archives are held physically in certain locations on Earth, in caves, in under earth chambers, but that, oh yes, lots of downloads coming in. Downloads for everyone who's able to receive these downloads, everyone receives them directly. You're receiving these downloads directly. Everybody's getting. I need to get my, excuse me. I need to get my lava rock. I need to get my lava rock. This beauty. This comes from a volcano in the around the Rim of Fire. It comes along the western coast of the United States. This wonderful thing. It looks like Patrick from SpongeBob. No, anyway, no, it's like a little being. But the thing about these spaces is that the information is held very concisely in the spaces, and it doesn't change. And the spaces are locations where information can be archived and it's not lost. It doesn't get lost unless we break. We don't want to break these, but even then, you know, if there's a break, still, like say there was a break in here, still the two sides of the break would still hold the information. There are procedures, and there are processes, and there are means by which consciousness becomes very intimately infused into the physical form. And this is part of the awakening process. And there are ways, they're saying there are ways to speed that process up. There are. So we've all received those ways as a direct download. We've also come to the end of our hour and 15 minutes. Please forgive me, because we've obviously at the same time opened a door for a very, very interesting field of exploration and discovery. And I'm just thrilled when we do these group sessions, because this is what always happens when we do the group sessions, is that our collective opens up doorways into areas of consciousness that were previously closed, or at least as far as we are concerned, were previously closed. So it's very powerful stuff. Believe me, we're not going to let this drop. This is still part of the work that we're doing. All of you will continue to process the download in sleep state, dream state, and waking state, and transcendental state, and all the states of consciousness. The many beloved states of consciousness will continue to translate, will continue to work together in the field of consciousness. And as more of this information comes out, I will continue producing material. So we'll see, you know, pages come up on the knowledge base, and more short videos describing, and, you know, I'm seeing that they've got a whole lot of techniques, like they've got methods of speeding up the process by which consciousness integrates with matter. So as these methods come to the surface, I will share them with you, because I love you, because there's nothing more exciting to me and nothing more meaningful for me than sharing all this information with you and watching how it bounces off of your amazing enlightened physiologies, and how together as a group, we actually bring forth, we actually create forward a whole new body of knowledge, experience, and understanding. So thank you very much for being with me today. This was amazing. I am so looking forward to sharing it all with you, and I couldn't possibly have done any of this without you. So bless you all, bless you. You are the blessing of my life. You mean the world to me. Thank you for being with me. We will have a wild and wonderful time the next webinar, which is about relationships. Oh, okay. So thank you everyone for being with me. Thank you. Love you all dearly, and see you soon. Bye.